Hey, what the hell are you doing walking around dressed like Star Wars?
It's Comic-Con, you idiot. We're going to the Javits Center.
Well, you're the idiots, because you three guys would never be walking together.
Yeah, you're his boss, and you two guys are enemies.
Yeah, bite me, Captain Kirk.
Hey, whoa, come on. No, that's Star Trek.
Yeah, that's two different franchises.
Yeah, sorry, guys. She doesn't know.
Nah, it's okay. I'm sorry you have to deal with that.
Let's go.
Oh, hey, come on. It's not worth it, man. It's not worth it. Not worth it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Fanzone Debate. Very excited about this one. We've got a rematch. It's a big one. You got the champion, Kirk Kowalkowski, coming off his defense against Amaru Moses, and he's going up against Brian Michaels, former champ. This is the third time they're playing. Brian won the first one in 3 rounds, or not 3 rounds. That's trivia talk. In a normal match. Then Kirk beat him in the title match to win his title. So very, very exciting. Very, very much looking forward to this. I got Mark and Robert here with me. Mark coming to you from his office. Robert coming to you from a hotel in Hawaii, I think. Very excited about it. Let's bring in the players and get started right away. Here's how it's going to work. The players in this title match drafted 5 categories. We gave them questions based on those categories. They're going to debate them tonight before our very souls. So they're each going to get 1 minute to open their argument, followed by followed by a 5-minute free form, which is then followed by a 1-minute closing. At the end of the debate, Mark, Robert, and I will write on our handy dandy boards who we thought won the debate. 2 out of 3 votes wins you a point. First person to hit 4 points in the title match will win the game. Any questions from the players?
No, sir.
All right, let's do it. All right, we are kicking this one off with the first category, which was drafted by Kirk. The category is Star Trek. The question is, what is the best scene in an original Star Trek film featuring a crew member? Kirk, you get to kick this one off. You have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
The scene I chose is the Nebula battle from Star Trek II Wrath of Khan. I picked this for a variety of reasons because this is a scene where, first of all, very important, you have a villain who is worthy to stand up to Kirk and the rest of the crew, who's a really good challenge for them. You have them in a situation where the crew in the situation where they are forced to rely on their wits. They can't just rely on their technology and all these extra things they have, being in Starfleet. All that's been taken away from them, and they have to find a way to level the playing ground and, use their brains and their wits. It's a scene with great special effects. It's an awesome space battle, a lot of cat and mouse, a lot of tension build up, and you have that great classic legendary James Horner score underlining all of it. These are all the best things that Star Trek does. That when you think about Star Trek, this is playing to their strengths, to the crew strengths, to the story strengths, to the franchise's strengths, and this is the scene that absolutely does it best. So Nebula Battle, Star Trek 2.
Okay. Going to move over to Brian. Brian, you have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
So at the end of Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, the Enterprise's warp drive is damaged in a battle, a fairly boring and mediocre battle, and the Enterprise can't escape the detonation of the Genesis device. Spock, knowing it will kill him, makes the choice to enter the radiation-flooded chamber and repair the warp drive in order to save the ship and everyone aboard. He's stopped briefly by Bones, whom he knocks out with the classic Vulcan nerve pinch, and then performs what we will eventually realize was a mind meld, telling him simply remember. As he completes the repairs and the Enterprise escapes, Kirk arrives in the engine room. Through the barrier between them, Spock explains his sacrifice, reiterating the classic line of the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. And these two old friends must say their goodbyes, with Spock saying, I have been and always shall be your friend. No other moment in the franchise has had such lasting cultural and emotional impact. No other scene balances the character, philosophy, and storytelling with such perfection, because Star Trek is not about space battles and action. This scene is the very heart of what Star Trek is all about, and that's why it's the greatest scene of them all.
All right. We will bring it back in, Kirk. Gentlemen, you now have 5 minutes to debate the question. I will be throwing up a 1-minute warning when the time comes. If one of you is talking way too much, I'm going to throw up the let your opponent talk. Don't make me do it. It will make me sad, and I do have to force Nick Tuig to drive to wherever you live to fight you to the death. So don't make me do it. 5 minutes when one of you starts.
I talked about the strengths of what Star Trek is and what it does best. What it does not do best is acting, especially heartfelt, serious acting. And I think that's what hurts your scene the most. You're getting the stereotypical William Shatner performance here. When everybody does Shatner, they're doing this, Spock, no, Spock. And that's what you get. And it just really weakens it. You have Nimoy just with pauses. You could drive a truck through doing a really bad death scene. Somebody quickly slaps spirit gum on his face to make it look like he was dying. Is it an emotional moment? Sure, but it's not a great scene. My scene, like I said, just comes together so much better and provides so much more than yours does.
Star Trek, especially the original cast, is definitely not known for their acting. I will give you that. But I think that in this movie and in this scene, those two are doing the best acting they've done in this series. I think that Kirk, William Shatner, has definitely scaled back on his, that weird, kind of tempo he has, the mannerisms, the cadence of his talking. And Spock, yes, he's going to have pauses. He's trying to breathe. The man is dying of radiation poisoning. He's barely getting the words out. So yes, he's going to have those dramatic pauses. Your scene has no excuse for the dramatic pauses. Your scene is a very kind of slow plotting thing. It's trying to be like an action scene, but it's actually quite boring. You talked about how it has great effects. The nebula is more like just like watching the battle in the middle of like a lava lamp with everybody kind of squinting at the static on screen, and it doesn't look good. And especially the effects have not held up. You practically see like the outlines of where they had met everything on there.
I think the effects hold up great. I think that I think the color of the nebula with the ships flying over, and again, it's not a high speed chase. It's a tension building. It's a submarine battle. It's a battle of wits. It's a test of wills, and that's what it's all about. It's that tense moment. As far as the acting goes, again, they're doing the best acting they can do, that Shatner could do in that moment. But I think the better acting is in my scene, because this is a scene where he's finally discovering that thing that he lost inside of himself, where he's finally getting his mojo back, so to speak, in this battle scene. I think that you really see that come through. I wasn't going to bring this up, but I will now because you did. The mind meld is a cheat. It wasn't in the original scene. They added it so they can do the convoluted return in Star Trek 3, Search for Spock. And that kind of cheapens your scene and the emotional weight going back and looking at it now, because we know, he's in bones and he's going to come back and everything there is for naught.
If you want to talk about what's wrong with 3 and bringing him back, you can take that in another debate in the future. This is about this film. When people saw this film, they didn't know he was coming back. Nobody knew that was a cheat. Nobody knew that was setting up something for the future. They were planting a seed for something they might do in the future. But the scene as it was, you just saw that, he had a moment with Bones, then he has that long thing with Kirk, and the acting is good. I didn't realize you were going to try and talk about the positive acting of Kirk in your scene, because Kirk's acting in your scene is quite horrible.
It's better.
But let's talk about characters while we're at it then, because Khan, this person who's been built up to be this genetically engineered super intellect, he's portrayed as this brilliant guy, this brilliant strategist. He somehow forgets about 3D space. Just because they go below him, he loses track of them. I mean, he starts behaving recklessly and making mistakes and tactical blunders, which totally contradict everything we've learned about the character up to this point.
And that's the whole point, is Kirk has baited him into that. Kirk, the whole time, Khan has been running the show. Khan has been calling the shots.
If he had a superior intellect, he wouldn't fall for that.
Everything is going on, and Kirk figures out a way to negate that superior intellect by appealing to his emotion, appealing to his rage, appealing to his desire for revenge, where all that gets blotted out, and he's not thinking clearly. And that's what's great about it, because, again, Kirk is using his wits here. He can't use technology. His technology's all been fried. He has to rely on his wits in the battle of wits, and that's what makes it great, is he figures out a way to supersede the intellect by making the rage and the anger come up. And going back to Mind Meld for 1 second, I brought it up because you made it part of your scene. And again, it was originally in there. They cheated to make Star Trek 3 happen.
You say the technology didn't work. Well, conveniently, some of the technology didn't work. It conveniently disables the sensors and the shields, but the intership communications still work. The phasers and torpedoes, while the targeting doesn't work, they're still able to shoot
specifically what they
things.
said would happen.
There's all these plot conveniences, especially, and again, with him forgetting that space can go up and down too. All these conveniences to make your scene happen. And your scene is they enter the nebula. From the time they enter the nebula to Khan's destruction is 13 minutes. I think I timed it. and there's like 1 minute of like action. And I know you're not looking for like fast-paced action, but it has to at least be interesting. But you're seeing is slow, it's plotting, it's a lot of squinting at screens, a lot of long dramatic pauses, a lot of vague techno babble, and it's a long drawn out scene that has about 1 minute of it that's actually interesting.
I think, like I said, I think that is interesting. That's where you get the scenes with when you don't see what's going on. You go, oh, is the ship there? Oh, it's there now. That kind of stuff, that building tension, that's what it's all about.
Time. I was so invested I couldn't eat my chips. Okay, we're going to start with Brian. Brian, you get to close first. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
So if you ask anyone if there's just one scene in Star Trek that stands out, and the vast majority will cite this one, Spock's death embodies everything Star Trek franchise aspires to be. It's not about flashy effects or space battles. It's not about humanity. I mean, it is about humanity, connection, and sacrifice. This scene gave us one of the most iconic goodbyes in movie history, and it did it with dignity and depth. There are very few truly emotional moments in Star Trek. Much of it, like the Nebula battle, is just a lot of spouting technobabble and slow-paced action. But here they lean into that emotion, and the result is the best, most memorable scene in all of Star Trek. Spock's calm, logical acceptance of death, along with Kirk's reaction, make up a scene that's important to the story, but also deeply emotional. Both Leonard Nimoy and William Shatner are doing their best acting of their careers. James Horner's score helps us feel both the triumph of the moment and the grief at learning the cost of that triumph. The Nebula battle, without Spock's death right after it, would just be a cool, if slow, chase in space. It's the aftermath that gives it real weight. The battle is a tense action piece, but Spock's death is a defining Star Trek moment. One shows how Starfleet wins, the other shows why it matters.
Okay. Let's go over to Kirk. Kirk, you have 1 minute to close when you start talking.
I'm not sure how Spock dying is why Starfleet winning matters. That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Couple of notes. They don't use the James Horner score in that scene. It's a rehash of the Jerry Goldsmith score. You talk about emotion. Like I said, you don't get that obvious like melodramatic emotion in my scene, but you do get the emotion of Kirk figuring himself out and getting this back. Yeah. Normies are going to tell you this is the scene because this is the one people think, see and like, oh yeah, Spock died. That was a big deal. But when you think about Star Trek and you really drill down on what Star Trek is about, it's about this crew coming together and figuring things out, overcoming adversity and winning the day. And that's what happens here. They defeat the enemy. They beat the bad guy because of their wits, because they're smarts, because they're able to overcome the challenges that they've gone through this whole movie, specifically Kirk, specifically Spock. This sets up everything in Brian's scene. Without this, Brian's scene wouldn't even really be a thing. But yeah, I think this is just the better acting, better special effects, better music, better everything all around.
Okay. Oof.
These guys, it's the first debate. Pace yourselves.
All right. This was good. Tit for tat, as they say. I went with Kirk. Very close. Brian had me for a lot of it purely on the icon. What's the word I'm looking for?
Iconography?
Iconography?
Yeah, of the scene. Thank you. And how just memorable his scene was. I think Kirk did a really good job, though, of taking Brian's argument against his scene and dismantling it. Like Kirk, I never really bought into Brian's arguments of the scene is like a boring, like bad special effect, like scene. Like I think Kirk did a good job explaining like why the scene is interesting, and also taking Brian's Star Trek isn't about action argument and kind of turning that as a pro for his. Like, yes, there's moments of action, but also it's like showing them win using the intellect and the skills and everything. So I went with Kirk. It was very close. Like, I could go on about other things, but I went with Kirk. Mark, your thoughts?
Oh yeah, I also went with Kirk. Yeah, a lot for the same reason you said. I think I also just kind of clicked with Kirk's real main argument of Brian's scene is kind of the scene that I think most people remember, but Kirk's scene really is like the scene that like just shows what Star Trek is and shows like the best qualities of what Star Trek is, and that's more or less why I landed with him.
Okay, Robert, your vote doesn't count. Where would you have gone and why?
This was a battle of wits, not unlike Kirk versus Khan. So it was very apropos to start out. Yeah, I liked there was a touch and go there. It seemed like every time Brian would bring something up, Kirk would kind of spin it in a certain way. Though Brian was able to mount defenses that went pretty well. But I did think that Kirk had a more of a variety of what made his scene good. So I come from a land down under. Men at Kirk.
Oh my God. Oh my Lord. Okay. All right. Kirk gets the first point. Thank you, Mark and Robert. We are going to move on to the next question, which was drafted by Brian in the category of horror. Which non-fandom 90s horror film has the best villain? We are going to start with Brian. Brian, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
I'm not going to bury the lead with a big lead up. It's Hannibal Lecter in Silence of the Lambs. I mean, come on, it's not even close. Hannibal was a villain who had already appeared in a previous film in the 80s that most people forgot about or didn't even know existed until Silence of the Lambs blew up and everybody started looking more into the character. But Anthony Hopkins' first turn as Hannibal was immediately hailed as iconic and simply one of the best villains of all time, and easily the top of the 1990s. He's scary in what we learn he's done up to end up in that cell, and in what we do see him do as he escapes. But in prison is where he really makes his mark. He's suave, he's well-spoken, he's charismatic, making him even more dangerous because people underestimate him or feel an odd attraction to him even. He manipulates them with his chilling charm and draws his victim into his web of psychological games. But it's not all psychological. At the same time, you can't forget how violent he can be and what a brutal killer he is, having murdered many and cannibalized their flesh, sometimes with some fava beans and a nice Chianti. Lecter is one of the best characters in movie history, and limiting it to just horror movies and just to 90s horror movies makes him stand out even that much more as the easy champion.
Okay, we're going to move over to Kirk. Kirk, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
Best 90s horror villain is Annie Wilkes, Kathy Bates in Misery, because I think the best villains are the ones you don't see coming. The ones who are quiet, who are unassuming, who 1 minute will, just be a quiet, friendly neighbor, who will, maybe, make you some soup and take care of you. And the next minute be, smashing your ankles with a sledgehammer because you've been a dirty birdie. And I think that's what's so terrifying and chilling about Annie is how she swings from one to another. You never know what she's going to do. You never know what she's thinking. You never know where head she's at. And you're not safe around her because she's just so unassuming. No one knows that she's dangerous. So once she has you, there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere to get help because no one suspects her. And I think that's what makes her the best villain. Just the fact that she is so, on one hand, nurturing and protective, and on the other hand, just a cold-blooded killer. She's evil and she doesn't even know it. She thinks she's a good guy. That's a great villain.
Time. Okay. All right. We'll bring in Brian. Guys, you have 5 minutes to continue the debate when one of you starts talking.
Yeah, so Annie Wilkes is kind of more of a situational villain. She's a great character. I will admit. I don't think she's a great villain. I think she's just kind of a great antagonist because she's just like this unstable, obsessed fan who didn't like a book ending. And so it's like more situational driven where, she's reactive rather than well-planned and manipulative like Hannibal Lecter is. I think that some sweet caring lady who might snap if you say the wrong thing is not nearly as scary as somebody who, you know, can like basically look at you and penetrate your soul with their eyes. And this intelligence and charisma and both charm, they unsettle you and kind of impress you at the same time.
I mean, she's situational, but what is a movie but a situation? We can't judge her anything other than the situation we see her in, and that's the situation she's in, where she's this terrifying villain. My issue with Lecter is that, to be honest, by the time we meet him, we know we're supposed to be afraid of him because we've been told. We've been told how scary he is. We've been told the stories. We've told how he bit the nurses' faces off. You know, he tells us about the Chianti and the fava beans. And so all this stuff is, we're told about everything. And even you brought up a lot of stuff, things that he'd done in the past. In the story, though, he's just scary because, hey, look at this guy. Look how scary he is. Look how bad he is. That's not as good a villain as somebody like Annie, who's a slow burn, and you slowly realize how dangerous she is.
The question is about the best villain, not the best villainous acts. So it doesn't matter what they committed these acts in this movie or if they are things from their past. We're talking about the character themselves. And its character in this movie has committed numerous horrific acts, and he kills multiple guards. He tears off one of their faces to use as a mask. But his character, even if once you've learned of him, built up, fine, that stuff happened in the past. If you want to ignore that, that's up to you in this argument. But when you meet him, you can't deny that the time he's on there, he is an absolutely riveting villain. He has such a personality, such a command of every scene. He's getting into Clarice's head. He's getting to everybody's head. How they don't know how to deal with him or what to believe because he's able to manipulate them. His conversations are more thrilling than quick shots that make you cringe like a sledgehammer to the feet.
I agree. He is a great character. It's a great performance. But as you just said yourself, we're talking about best villain. And I'm not going to argue whether or not he's a villain. The answer was accepted. That's fine. But I mean, we're burying the lead. This movie has another main villain. And how can you say your villain is the best when he is actively assisting the protagonist to find the other villain? When you think about the third act, the big climatic finale in this movie, your villain's not even there. We're not even thinking about him. He's not a part of this. He's an afterthought at that point. His big climatic moment is realizing that the protagonist had a traumatic experience with sheep. And then he's pretty much out of the story. He's not.
Again, you're focusing on plot, not character. And he is a villain in the movie. There is more than one villain in this movie. Yes, Buffalo Bill is like the one they are after. He's kind of the MacGuffin villain and everything. But Hannibal Lecter is absolutely a villain. And I know how much the judges hate when you get into semantics, try to claim he's not a villain, because he is.
I'm not saying he's not a villain. I'm just saying he's not a good villain.
The question is about the best villain in a 90s horror film, and he absolutely qualifies as a villain, and he is the best one that they've created because of the personality they give him, because of the history they gave him, which is part of the character, because of his actions and conversations in the movie, which is part of his character. Everything about him has created this great villain who you fear, even though most of the time you don't see him doing these things. You're told about them until at the end you finally see him, kind of how he can go so primal and what he's capable of. And then it obviously leads into future movies, which we won't discuss because it's not part of this conversation, but it has that great ending where, he's free and he's going to go have a friend for dinner. He's going after the doctor.
He's free and you're not worried about it at all because he's not going to butt a protagonist, and
he's going
after the one character that the movie has taught us to hate the entire time. Another villain in this movie that we hate more than Lecter. Lecter's essentially a hero at the end of this movie. And you're excited when you're like, oh yeah, good, he's gonna go get that guy. I hate that guy. Where when Annie Wilkes dies, you're so relieved because of how dangerous she was and what a threat she was to Paul. When her head finally hits that typewriter and she's dead, and you realize it's done, then it's like, oh, thank God. And then when Paul sees her again, you're like, oh my God, is she ever going to go away? That's a real villain. When you're relieved that they're dead, you're relieved that they're gone. Then that's a villain, not somebody who's like, oh, look, he's going on vacation now. He's going to go get somebody I hate. That's not a good villain.
Because my character doesn't die, and so you can't cheer it on, doesn't make him less of a villain. Again, you keep talking about plot points, like what's the best villain's arc or whatever in this movie, but it's not. This is about the villain. This is about the character. It's not about their actions. It's about who has created which movie has created the best villain. And when you look at, and like you said, he was accepted as a villain. He is a villain in the movie, if not the one they're chasing.
He's not a good villain, though.
He's absolutely.
You can be a good character, not a good villain.
But he's both. He's absolutely both. Whereas Annie Wilkes is kind of a character. She's not a villain. She's a person who just went crazy.
Absolutely a villain.
All right. We're going to start with Kirk. Kirk, you have 1 minute to close when you start talking.
Is Anthony Hopkins given a great performance? Yes. Is Hannibal Lecter a fascinating character? Yes. Is he a great villain? No. And that's specifically what we're talking about. Brian's saying, oh, you're talking about villain arcs. You're talking about villain plot points. Yeah, that's what makes a villain. And he's not a great villain in this movie. He's overshadowed, not as a character. He's not overshadowed, but as a villain, he is overshadowed by Buffalo Bill. Like I said, in that third act, you don't even, in that climactic battle, you're not even thinking about Hannibal Lecter. You're thinking about how is she going to beat Buffalo Bill, because he's the big bad in this movie, where he is Lecter's secondary as a villain, not as a character, as a villain. Annie Wilkes is so much scary. You keep saying she's not a villain. Look at everything she does. What's scary about Annie is that she's dangerous. She's a killer, but she's not surrounded by. She's not tied down. She's not wearing a mask. She's not surrounded by guards, because nobody knows how dangerous she is, and that's what makes her a great villain. You know, she's so crazy, and she thinks she's right. She thinks she's doing the good thing, and that's what makes a great villain. Lecter was shown, not told.
I don't know what you said at the end there, but strike it from the
strike it because I said it wrong anyway.
Okay, so we are going to move on to Brian. Brian, you have 1 minute to close your argument when you start talking.
Again, just because villainous acts aren't committed on screen doesn't mean that they didn't happen. Doesn't mean they aren't part of this person, part of this character, part of what makes him evil, part of what makes him a villain. Everybody, fans, critics, AFI, everybody have all agreed when you see like polls and lists and things like this, that Hannibal Lecter is one of the best villains of all time, if not number one. And yes, Annie Wilkes will be on some of those lists, but I guarantee you should be further down. Hannibal makes more of an impact in his limited screen time than most characters do in entire films or even franchises, and especially more than Annie Wilkes. From the first unsettling shot of him standing in his cell to the final line of "I'm having an old friend for dinner," Silence of the Lambs brought us one of the most memorable, unique, layered, and iconic villains of all time. Whether he's playing mind games and manipulating people or killing guards and using their face as a mask, he's frightening and intimidating, but at the same time, charismatic and enigmatic, which makes him more interesting as a villain. He is a villain like no other and is brilliantly written and acted. Annie's a great character, but compared to Hannibal, she's overshadowed by any metric. Hannibal's a great character, a great presence, a great villain.
Okay. Bring in the judges. All right. All right, Robert, why don't you kick us off?
We did it. This was one of those debates where we mostly just talked about why things were like how we described things. In the debate, in the movie. We did it. It only took to the second one. It was great. This was very interesting. I enjoyed how it was kind of like circling the wagons. We tried to keep recircling and getting around what everybody was saying. And each one of them had good points that made me seesaw on what I believed was a good villain. And there were points that Kirk made that made a lot of sense, being overshadowed by Buffalo Bill, all that. But I think Brian had enough of a defense against them that I decided to go with the Brian game, and I went with Brian, just based along the lines of I think what Hannibal does as a character mixed with what he does as a villain makes him.
Okay. This was good. Both convinced me that their character was a villain. And
so we met the minimum bar is what you're saying. Okay.
Yeah. And that they were good villains. So it kind of came down to the attacks on their opponents. I thought Kirk actually did a better job of taking down Hannibal, which shocked me. I just saw Misery for the first time like a month ago. Really enjoyed the movie. But going into this, I would not have pegged that. But I thought that Kirk's argument of like everything that's, yes, Hannibal does bad things in the movie, but a lot of it is stuff that we're told. And I thought that the argument of there's another villain in this movie that is even better, I don't agree with that, but he made a really good argument for it. And so I went with Kirk. Mark, you're deciding this one. I apologize.
Yeah, this is a bit of an odd fight. And I think kind of Kirk going into this one knew he kind of had to create a bit of a smoke screen to kind of work around, because I feel like he just kind of knew immediately he's behind. He kind of threw a lot of things at Brian here throughout this fight to kind of make him fight like a different fight, so to speak, and to kind of make him bring up defenses for things he probably shouldn't have. And honestly, I think he kind of did enough of that. It's kind of for a lot of the same reason that Tim brought up of, like, having him being a secondary villain and kind of us being told things. Like, he brought up these points, and I don't think Brian had good enough defenses for, like, many of those points. And that's kind of why, like, I went with Kirk on that last one.
All right. So that means that Kirk is up 2-0. So we are going to move to the third question in the category of classics. This was drafted by Kirk. Your question is, which classic Kurosawa film has the most relatable characters? Kirk, you drafted this. You get to go first. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
The movie I selected for most reliable Kurosawa film is Do Desu Den. This is a movie that takes place, it covers a whole community, a poor community of people living in a junkyard in Japan. And you get people from all walks of life suffering different things. And it's so relatable because you get so many different stories, and there's so many universal themes of life and love and death and marriage and parenthood and family. And all these things come together. And, every time you get like a different little nugget from somebody's story, you find something there you can sink into, because they are universal ideas. Maybe on the surface it doesn't seem that way, but if you look a little closer, you see that yes, I could see myself in this, or I could see somebody I know in this, or I relate to this situation. And there's so many different moving parts of this movie. And again, it's all about that. That's what Kurosawa does best, is really bring these universal themes to life. And I think this is the best movie of his that does that. And that's why I picked Do Desu Den.
Okay. I'm going to move over to Brian. Brian, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
At some point in our lives, every one of us confronts the same questions. Like, what is my purpose? Have I lived my life meaningfully? We've all felt that weight of monotony, stuck in routines and unfulfilling jobs, going through the motions, feeling like a faceless cog in the machine. We eventually feel our mortality and start to fear that we've wasted our time, that we might leave this world without ever having truly lived. That's what makes Akiru so powerful and profoundly relatable. Kanji is a low-level bureaucrat stuck in a system that grinds him down. When he's diagnosed with cancer, he's told he has 6 months to live, he begins to examine his life. His search for meaning leads him to a single act of purpose, building a park for the community. And in choosing to leave behind something good, he reclaims his dignity and his life. But the relatability in Akiru doesn't end with Kanji. The film is filled with characters that mirror our own experiences. The women navigating an endless maze of indifferent government offices and red tape. The young woman Kanji befriends, full of energy and idealism, represents who we once were and who we wish we still could be. Kanji's relationship with his son painfully captures a truth many parents know too well, of heartbreak of sacrificing everything for your child only to be unappreciated as they grow older.
Time. Well, can't wait for that. All right. 5 minute freeform.
Not all of them.
Not all the kids. Just Bucky. Okay. 5 minutes when one of you starts talking.
I think, first of all, I just got to say it's a matter of quantity of relatability, because I feel like your story is focused on such a very specific situation, very specific person, and how people relate to that. And not, again, all of us will have to face it at some point, but, none of us relate to it now, fortunately. Where mine is everything you have family. You have parents who are dealing with disappointment in their children, not being able to have do what their children need. You have parents who have dreams their children can't fulfill. You have married couples who are struggling and wondering if the grass is greener. You have people who are under the burden of their family. You have so many different things in my movie where you can look at it and say, okay, right now I relate to that person. I relate to that situation. I've been in a place in my life where you can relate to that, where I really don't find Akira is a great movie, but I don't find that level of relatability there anywhere.
I agree with you completely, Kirk, that it's all about quantity, because my film has Kanji as obviously the main character, and so he's the main one you're relating to, but you are relating to the women who are dealing with the bureaucracy. You're dealing with the young girl that he befriends. You're relating to his son, and how his relationship with his son, and so there's several characters in here that you do relate to. Yours has quantity over quality. There are so many stories, too many. There's far more characters. There's like 7 storylines and 20 characters. They don't spend enough time with any one of them that you can feel too deeply with them. You can't identify them because you don't spend enough time with them to get to know them before they've moved on to another story.
I would say that they spend more time with each of my characters, each of my stories, than they do with the women who are dealing with the bureaucracy, with the son. Those are things in this film that really come and go. You're overplaying your hand there. Where mine are, you're getting a lot. I mean, it's like a smorgasbord, but it's all good. There's a lot of meat that you want to. It's not shallow. There's a lot of depth in there. And again, it's going fast, and some of it's humorous, some of it's sadder, but it's all there. Like as you're watching it, you're feeling it all build up, and as those stories resolve themselves, you feel more and more connected to all those people. It's not a shallow story. It's paced well, and you get bits and pieces, but it all comes together and it gels very well, and you feel everything these characters are feeling.
I think quantity means nothing. I think if I watched a movie with one character in it or 2 characters in it, and and those characters are relatable, I would consider that movie has the most relatable characters. I wouldn't care about how many characters are relatable. I have to do with if the characters in the movie are relatable. So yes, primarily it is about Kanji Watanabe, and he is by far the most relatable. I think that you are really kind of skimming over what these stories are about. There's some dark stories in there, and I'm not sure if you'd want to find them relatable, and if you do, it's a little weird. But I think that your universal themes in yours are not universal themes. They're more like vignettes. They're just little entertaining stories, whereas mine goes deeper. It finds reasons that my character is relatable because everyone has gone through what he's gone through of these struggles in life, whether it be in work, whether it be in dealing with his family, whether it be just in facing his mortality and wanting to know what he's done with his life that's worth it and what he'll be remembered for.
You say Kanji's the most relatable character. Let me ask you a question. After this movie was over, did you go to work the next day?
Yes.
Did you change anything in your life?
No.
Neither did I, and neither do most people. So if you say he's the most relatable character, we don't really relate to him because we don't experience him.
Notice the Con, did you the next day go and rape your niece? Because your character does that.
No,
you don't relate to him.
Okay, no, I don't relate. I'm saying I relate to those situations. We don't relate to Kanji situations. It's a situation the Kanji's and that we don't relate to, and it's the proof in the pudding is we don't do anything different. The movie's inspiring you to do something different, and we don't, and most people don't. So if you say Kanji's the most relatable character, and he's the central focus, all these other characters are coming and going real quick, and you talk about shallow, you are overplaying the space these characters take up.
Part of the argument, part of the movie, this theme is the futility of trying to be able to make change. Because at the end of the movie, there's all these people who go to his funeral, and they're like, oh, we're going to change, we're going to be better, and you show the next day at work, everything is back to the same. And that is relatable because, yes, we want to try to be better, but it's often very difficult to make change, to make things happen. And the characters, as much as they want to change, things often stay the same. It may not be the happy ending that we want, but we definitely relate to that idea and that struggle that we always have.
So there's one group of people at the end of the movie in one scene that are relatable, is what we come down to.
No, I've listed several that are relatable. I'm saying you're trying to pick and choose which ones you talk about.
You're accusing me of overplaying my hand. Your characters, other than Kanji, are in and out of the movie very quick. My characters, the movie takes time to establish their situations, establish their love lives, their family. You have the father whose son is dying. You have the mother whose son is mentally challenged and she's trying to deal with that. You have so many things like that.
Living in a landfill. Just saying.
We're going to start with Brian. Brian, you have 1 minute to close when you start talking.
Ikiru resonates because its character reflects a universal truth that we all get stuck in routines, lost in the machinery of daily life, wondering if it's too late to make a difference. But the film reminds us it's not necessarily. We can all identify with wanting to find purpose and with facing mortality and taking stock in our lives so far and trying to do something positive, even if we don't always succeed. We can all identify with the frustration of red tape and with seeing a forgotten, optimistic version of yourself in someone younger. Ikiru isn't just the story of Kanji and these other characters. It's kind of the story of us too. We identify with them. Dodos Dakan, on the other hand, is a film with many storylines and a lot of characters, but few of them feel real or relatable. They're not people so much as caricatures, broad, exaggerated, often disturbing. A mentally ill boy who runs around thinking he's driving a trolley every day, a couple of drunks who engage in wife swapping, a man stuck raising multiple children that aren't his from his wife's adulterous affairs, an uncle who rapes his niece, as I mentioned earlier. These are the characters that he tried to pretty up what these stories are about. And if these are the people that Kirk finds relatable, I worry about him and his family.
That's funny. All right. Let's go over to Kirk. Kirk, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
Yeah, you have the mentally ill boy who is different from everybody else and has to learn how to be different from everybody else. You have the man who accepts these children who aren't his because he made bad decisions in love and he's making the best of that bad situation. You have a victim of abuse, which is unfortunately all too relatable. And so thank you, Brian, for bringing up all these points of all these different things that are relatable in my story. He said it's not relatable to live in a landfill. No, it's not. But financial insecurity, struggling paycheck to paycheck, where you know how you're going to feed your family, pay your bills, that these days is very relatable. So Brian's bringing up these things, trying to shoot them down, but there's situation these characters, every single one of them, as Brian again, thank you, pointed out, every single one of these is relatable. Brian's movie is about one guy, and it's the whole story is how we fail to relate to him. That's the whole point of the movie, is that we fail to relate to him. His other characters are in and out. They're very shallow. They're very quick. It's all about him, and it's about our failure to relate to him. That's the whole central point of the movie.
Okay. Gonna bring in, why can't I? My thing's not working. Help. There we go. Jesus. My mouse died for a second there. All right. All right, Mark. Shall we begin?
All right. Yeah. You know, there's no big lead up here. I went with Brian here. I kind of feel like just in general, like when we kind of got like into the nitty gritty of all this and kind of just explaining all these different plot points and themes, it just I feel like just from a base level, just from a base relatable level, what just kind of relates to most people. I feel like Brian's movie felt like it could relate to more people. It felt like something that just the average person relates to or will relate to just at some point of their life. And that's just kind of where I felt just for the majority of this fight.
Okay, Robert.
Yeah, there's a lot of quantity versus quality, but I was trying to take that out of it because I think when most people look at a movie, I think they kind of glom on to one character and that's related to them, or like stories of one person can be universal beyond kind of what you see on the surface or what they're dealing with in the situation. So that kind of canceled each other out. I was with Brian a lot based on his hits and attacks on Kirk, but I think because Kirk had the ending final minute, there were things Kirk was able to flip on and able to give me more. I didn't get enough from Kirk for the majority of it, but that ending really did help. So I went with Kirk Kowalkowski.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, I went with Brian. Very similar to Mark. I'm going to echo a lot, and I agree with some of the points that Robert made as well. I thought Kirk's closing was really strong. As someone who has not seen these movies, I'm obviously going off of the players telling me why I should relate to these characters and what they're going through. And I agree with Mark, where like, just based on Brian's argument, I felt like it was the more relatable relatable character, even if it was singular. And I felt like Kirk's argument, he was making a lot of leaps to show how they were relatable. I might feel differently after watching it, but just based on what I heard, I went with Brian. So Brian gets on the board. It is 2-1. We are going to move on to the next question, which was drafted by Brian in the category of Law and Order. Question is, which Lethal Weapon scene is the most fun to watch? Brian, you get to kick this off. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
So in Lethal Weapon 2, Murtaugh sits down on the toilet, the first time he's had the bathroom to himself in 20 years, as he puts it. And as he turns the toilet paper roll, sees, boom, you're dead written on it. A bomb's been put there, and if he stands up, he dies. The whole scenario is completely ridiculous, but in a perfectly Lethal Weapon way. It's a deadly situation involving a toilet. The scene escalates beautifully. What starts as Murtaugh calling Riggs for help while on the toilet turns into a full-on demolition. He asks Riggs to keep it quiet, which he assures him he will, but then smash cut to absolute chaos outside and in. Crowds, police, fire department, bomb squad, reporters, the psychiatrist. Danny Glover's hilarious, even just his face showing his panicked but deadpan delivery. Gibson's also funny, but still managed to convey his true loyalty and seriousness of the situation. And we even get a callback to the on 3 or 1, 2, 3, go debate from earlier in the film. Everything about this scene works to make it so much fun. The scene blends the absurdity, the tension, the buddy cop chemistry that makes Lethal Weapon perfect. And it's just a blast to watch these two characters in the most fun scene in the series.
Time. All right. Gonna bring in Kirk. Kirk, you have 1 minute to open your argument when you start talking.
I went with the diplomatic immunity been revoked scene and the fight leading up to that on the freighter in Lethal Weapon 2. I think this is just so much fun and shows everything this franchise is about. It starts off with a big explosion. Cargo container blows up, money flies everywhere. You have a shootout on the ship. You have hand-to-hand combat. You have Riggs just showing how crazy and how tough he is fighting a guy. You have Murtaugh chasing down the villain. And what's really great about this is that you have the script is flipped at the end, and you have Murtaugh, who's been more of the Law and Order guy, where Riggs is the loose cannon. Murtaugh is the one, diplomatic immunity. He puts a bullet in the guy's head. He breaks the rules because that guy needs to go down. And we were waiting the whole movie to see that racist bastard get taken out. And that's so much fun. The action, the just that moment with the villain. It is such a great Lethal Weapon moment, and it's so much fun to watch. So much fun to see. It's rewatchable over and over again. Great moment. Great scene.
All right. 5-minute freeform when one of you starts.
So yours is a great scene, but it's not a fun scene. You have one really fun line, but nothing is fun about the scene. You talk about the explosions and the action and the fights, but it's not the kind of like the fun fights and action you see like earlier in the film or in some of the other Lethal Weapon films. This is all deadly serious. You've had Riggs, who's basically just gotten his ass kicked, he's gotten stabbed, he's bloody, and then when he finally survives and beats that henchman, he gets shot several times by Arjun, and then after that, then Murtaugh shoots him and says the one funny line in it. It's a fun moment. It's a great moment. But the whole scene, which is the question, the fun scene, most of that scene is serious. It's not fun.
I mean, it's a Lethal Weapon movie. It's a shootout and a fight. That's the fun of the whole movie. That's what action movies are. If that's not fun for you, that's more fun than? It's more fun than watching a guy sitting there being explained to him how he's going to get off this and the different techniques they're going to use to stop the bomb. I mean, he's on a toilet. Ha ha ha. It's funny. But there's nothing fun about this scene. It's a good character moment because it's sweet when you see them connect before it pulls them off. But there's nothing going on. There's no action. There's no one-liners. There's nothing exciting or fun going on. It's not a fun scene to watch. There's not a whole lot of tension because they're not going to blow Murdoch up in the middle of the movie. He's going to get off. It's fine. And the way they do it isn't even that. It's kind of anticlimactic. Just pulls him off in the tub like they said they were going to do. It goes. They have a plan, and the plan goes fine. That's not a lot of fun.
The scene is everything that is right with Lethal Weapon, everything that is fun about Lethal Weapon, because Lethal Weapon is best when it's Riggs and Murtaugh together. It's the chemistry between them, how they play off each other. It's the dialogue, it's the banter, it's the personality clash, and everything about that shows in this scene. But it shows they still have a brotherhood and a love for each other because he's determined to help this man survive, and they're worried about the embarrassment of it all. And I know you don't think it's funny because you've never liked anything funny because you apparently have no comedy bone in your body.
Okay.
Because you think that people sitting in a room talking and saying lines can't be funny. There's lots of funny lines in this scene, but yet you think that what is fun is action, where it's like I said, there is action in Lethal Weapon movies that is fun. The action in his final scene is not something you would describe as fun, but yours commits the cardinal sin of taking Riggs and putting him down here and Murtaugh up here, and they're completely separated, which is not what makes Lethal Weapon fun. The two of them together is what makes it fun.
It's funny that you criticize what I find funny, but you're saying that like shootouts and explosions and fights aren't fun. So, I mean, let's talk about who has a better opinion.
I used the wrong word, but you said you didn't think they were fun. I think they are fun.
But absolutely, it's fun. And what's fun is they split it up. It's that juxtaposition where Murdoch is the one that's hot-headed now, and you have Riggs in that fight, and you have Riggs getting beat up, and he's getting stabbed, and you see that craziness come out of him, and he fights this guy off, and he finally beats him. You see that Riggsness of him shines, that insanity. I think you have that moment where they come together. You have a better character moment, even though yours is a good character moment. You have that better character moment, my end, when Riggs does get shot. You get down, oh, great, he's okay, it's fine. They're going to laugh and they're joking. That's how the movie fades out. That's a great character moment of bringing the whole scene is bringing them together.
Or like the end of my scene, when after the explosion, they're in the bathtub, and Riggs says, "You get off me, man. I don't want them to see us like this." Because mine has the great ending to it too, which it gives us that fun moment. But yours, you talk about how it's juxtaposed so that Murtaugh gets to be, the wild, crazy one. At no point in the scene does that happen. He looks up at him, he kind of cranks his neck, and he takes the shot and says the line. At no point is he taking the Riggs version, and at no point is Riggs taking the Murtaugh version, because Murtaugh has never been.
I never said that.
Martial arts either.
I never said that. I never said that that Murtaugh is being crazy. I said he's the one that decides, this guy, legally I can't take this guy out, but I'm going to anyway because he needs taken out, and he makes that decision. That's what's cool about it. That's what's fun about it. You're seeing, again, like I said, he sits on the toilet. There's a million people there. They come in and say, hey, we're going to drop the blanket. You pull them off. We're using nitrogen. They're just sitting there explaining it. It's just a lot of talking. Talk. You get a character moment. That's it. Mine is action. Mine's explosions. Mine everything. Mine is all this shootout. It's all this cool stuff. All this fun stuff. If you don't think shootouts are fun, fine. If you don't think seeing guys get stabbed in the leg and fight back is fun. If you don't think seeing the racist bastard bad guy get taken out is fun, fine. But I think a lot of people would think that's fun.
Well, violence can be done in a fun way. It's just that, like I said, in Lethal Weapon does it a lot. But in your scene, it's just the fact that there are actions and explosion and stabbings doesn't make it fun. It's a much darker form of action in that scene. In my scene, it absolutely is fun from beginning to end. Yes, when they're sitting there talking about it, and you can try to boil it down to like, a one-line description of what happens in the scene and make it sound really boring, but it's not. There are hilarious lines, there are hilarious facial expressions. There are so many things about it that make it fun, whether it be just the juxtaposition of the chaos happening there to the actual, the on 3 or 1, 2, 3 debate that is kind of a callback to earlier in the film. Everything about this makes it fun. Yours is a funny line in an otherwise serious, great action scene, but not a fun one.
Serious action can still be fun. They won't,
and not all action is fun, movie, and yours is not.
It's very fun.
Because you told me.
Oh my God, you two. Okay, we're gonna start with Kirk. Kirk, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
Again, if you don't think shootouts are fun, if you don't think watching the bad guy or the good guys come out and take out the bad guys, if you don't think guy getting beat up and coming back and taking out the villain is fun, fine, don't give me the point. I think that stuff fun. I don't know why, what defines serious action, serious shooting versus non-serious shooting, serious stabbing versus non-serious stabbing. I think that's a nonsense argument. My scene has the action. It has the moment of them coming together at the end. You talked about that they're not together. The whole scene brings them together. I think there's a great explosion. There's a great shootout. There's great stabbing. You see these villains that you've hated the whole movie finally get their comeuppance. That's what's so great about mine. Brian's scene, he's sitting there, they're talking, they're explaining, they're figuring out what they're going to do. And again, like I said, there's no tension in the scene to make it fun. You want to talk about not fun action? Scene in the middle of the movie where it's just going to go exactly how they planned is not fun because there's no tension, because they're not going to die there. So there's no tension. It's not fun. It's a good character moment, but nothing that exciting.
Okay. We're going to move over to Brian. Brian, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
Yeah, all the shootings in movies like Goodfellas and Godfather, there's so much fun. Not all action is fun, so I don't know why you think that it's weird for me to think that a certain shootout isn't fun. But here's the problem with diplomatic immunity scene. Murtaugh's one-liner, like I said, is a single funny line. But that scene as a whole isn't fun. It's what the question is asking for, the whole scene. Aside from that one line, the rest of it's deadly serious. The lead up to that line is Riggs barely surviving getting his ass kicking and stabbed, only for him to then be shot multiple times. And that's not my idea of fun, to watch your hero get shot. What makes Lethal Weapon fun is the duo of Riggs and Murtaugh and their buddy cop chemistry. So the scene that's the most fun is the one that actually features both of them together playing off each other. The entire toilet bomb scene from beginning to end, it's a ridiculous setting, it's the escalating chaos of the situation, the reactions of the supporting characters, and especially the banter between Riggs and Murtaugh. All the way through to the aftermath where the toilet flies out the window and lands on the hood of Murtaugh's car, and Riggs says that line of "Get off me, man." Watching the bathroom scene, you laugh, you cheer, and after you watch it, I guarantee you'll think of it and chuckle the next time you're on the toilet and look over at the toilet paper roll.
All right. Let's bring in the judges. Okay.
I need a minute, Tim.
Unacceptable. Be faster. No, I'm kidding. You're great. Don't change a thing.
Also hard to come up with my shtick. I boxed myself into a corner.
Yeah, you did a little bit. All right. This was great. I love these movies. I think this one might be my favorite. I don't know. I go back and forth between the first and the second one. Big fan is what I'm here to say. I did end up going with Kirk. I love Brian's scene. I really do. It's one of my favorite scenes in the series. But I think Kirk's argument of there's no tension and no fun to be had because you know exactly what's going to happen. I don't necessarily agree with it, but I think it was a good argument to combat Brian's argument. And Kirk was pissing Brian off, I could tell. But I do think that Kirk being snarky and being like, "Oh, so you don't think shooting is fun? Like, oh, you don't, like, I think he got under Brian's skin a little bit, and it worked in Kirk's favor in this instance. I get what Brian was trying to go for of saying like the tone is more serious in that sequence because it is. But I think Kirk just really sold it on why it was still just like a fun scene nonetheless. So I went with Kirk. Mark, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we really got into the weeds a bit of like what is fun, what's serious fun, who is fun. Do people find me fun? Like, you know, we really stretched the boundaries of said question we got in here today. I did go with Brian, like mainly because like I think even though we kind of went all these places, I think I still agree more with Brian's central argument of it is a scene with Riggs and Murtaugh that is bantering back and forth, and that is when Lethal Weapon is at its most fun. So that's what I went with. Go ahead.
All right, go for it, Robert.
Yeah, this debate was explosive, not unlike what happened in that bathroom. So again, very apropos. It was great. It was. This is very topsy-turvy. It took me a minute to come up with an answer because I was thinking about all the different points, and each one spoke to me. I was like, is action scenes fun? Yeah, of course action scenes are fun. The tip to Kirk. yeah, but it's serious all the time in this, and then there's action scenes all the time. Tip to Brian. And I did a lot of all the time. What really spoke out to me, I think, when I went with Bri Fidelity. That's Brian. I went with Brian because I
Getting
think
worse.
no, it's getting better. I think Brian's point on like the separation on the freighter of them, and to Mark's what Mark had said, I think Lethal Weapon works best when they're together and the chemistry is obvious, and I think it's more kin to what's going on in the bathroom than on the freighter. So I went with Brian.
Okay. That means we are all tied up 2-2. And we're going to move on to the final prep question. This was.
Can I go grab some real quick?
Yes. All right. Last category, drafted by Kirk. Category is crime. Question is, which crime film should be seen by more people? Kirk, you're kicking us off. You have 1 minute when you start talking.
When you say what movie should be seen by more people, it's a difficult question because, what does that mean when someone should see it? I picked a movie called Detective Bureau 2-3. Go to hell, bastards. A, because it has the greatest name of any movie ever, but also because I think when you say what should people see, I think it should be about people exploring new avenues, seeing things, movies that are underseen that deserve a bigger audience because of various reasons that it hasn't received that. This is an introduction to three things. It's an introduction to Nikatsu Noir, which is a really great crime subgenre that came out of Japan in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Is an introduction to Seijin Suzuki, who is a great Japanese crime director who has a really cool style, makes a lot of great movies, and was influenced on Tarantino. And also could be an introduction to Joe Shishido, who is the coolest and most charismatic actor out of Japan, not named Toshiro Mifune. It's a great movie, really cool tone, really great looking, a lot of fun crime. So this movie I want people to watch.
Time. Okay. Let's move over to Brian. Brian, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
So in September of 1990, the crime drama State of Grace came out, a gritty story of brotherhood, secrets, betrayal, and vengeance in the heart of Hell's Kitchen. The film starred Sean Penn, Gary Oldman, and Ed Harris at the top of their game, and a stacked cast that had John Turturro, Burgess Meredith, and early career performances from Robin Wright and John C. Reilly. Behind the camera was the cinematographer of Blade Runner, and the score was composed by none other than Ennio Morricone. How did a film with this kind of pedigree slip through the cracks of public awareness? Because a film with even bigger names and more impressive pedigree came out the exact same week, the legendary Scorsese and De Niro crime film Goodfellas. A big hit from a bigger studio with more marketing. State of Grace didn't just get overshadowed, it got buried. Had it come out in a different year, it may have had a very different legacy. But here's the thing. Critics who did see it praised it. Audiences who have seen it love it. Yet after all this time, it has still somehow stayed under the radar. And it's time that more people discovered this great film and got to appreciate it as much as the relatively few of us that have seen it.
Okay. All right. State of Grace versus The Bastards, or whatever it was. What was it?
Go to hell, bastards.
Detective Bureau 2-3.
You're going to say it like that every time, right?
Yep.
Go to hell, bastards. Okay. All right. 5 minutes when one of you starts talking.
Usually, I'd say close to 100% of the time, when there's a movie that has the pedigree that you say, the cast, the score, the cinematography, and you say, wow, why did more people not know about these movies? When you watch the movie, you realize why. And it's because even with all those parts coming together, it's not that great. I don't think after 35 years, you can still blame Goodfellas for holding this movie down. If there was an audience to be found for this movie, it would have found it by now.
You say usually, and there are exceptions. This is one, because there are plenty of movies that you see with big names on them that aren't famous, and you watch them, you find out this is why nobody watched this film. But everyone who has watched this film, it gets overwhelmingly positive reviews, both in critics and audiences alike on Letterboxd, IMDb, wherever you want to look. And this is a movie, and yes, it got overshadowed by Goodfellas upon its release. And yes, in the time since then, you can't completely blame Goodfellas for that. But because it didn't get awareness upon its release, it just ended up just going in the bin with everything else, and nobody else looks for it. But as more and more people have been finding it, they have been loving it. And more people need to see this, because if I talk to 20 people in this community, I bet you 16 of them haven't even heard of it. And that just shows that more people need to watch this, because I think they would fully appreciate it. I just want to touch on your title, first of all. It's so amusing. I don't want people to think that that makes it a fun movie because it's not really all that much fun. The title is really just a byproduct of bad translation, which happens a lot in Asian movies. Just want to get that out of the way.
Okay, that's fine. Still fun. But no, I think that your movie, again, you have the cinematography. I didn't even know it was a Blade Runner cinematography. To hear that blows my mind because this movie is so boring to look at. When I saw Enrico Morricone on this, like I'm like, oh, that should be the most bland, dramatic crime score you can imagine. So I mean, this movie is much less than the sum of its parts. My movie is so excited. It's so much fun. It's got this really cool tone. Of like it's a crime story. It does undercover work like yours does, but it's a lighter tone. You have like music and dancing, some really good cinematography, some great lighting, and it takes place at Christmas, so it's basically Japanese Die Hard.
Everything you said was wrong. The cinematography in this is not Blade Runner, but it is getting that gritty Hell's Kitchen. It feels almost operatic at times in the story. The score by Ennio Morricone does the exact same thing. It serves the story. It's not trying to be bombastic. It's not like a Star Wars theme or something. It's just supposed to support the movie, and it does. Your tone is all over the place. First of all, you have the musical sequences you talked about. They have several full entire musical numbers shoved in the middle of this movie that don't really fit in it. You have fake looking gunfights. You have bad acting. You have your lead actor who you say people want to know, who looks like he's a chipmunk or having an allergic reaction to something stuffed in his cheeks. So it's hard to even take him seriously looking at him. And then throughout the movie, your score, if you want to charge his scores, you're having action scenes set to like jazz music and like surfer vibes. And it's like, what the hell is this music? It doesn't fit the movie at all.
Yeah, it's a great like rock and roll jazzy score.
Yeah, that fits a crime movie. Great.
Yeah, it does. With this tone, it does.
Yeah.
I think my movie is great. It's a great undercover story. It's great about like cat and mouse. There's a lot of fun stuff. Your movie is so generic. It's just bad New York accents. The Irish are all like just the Irish. The main trait of most of the Irish people, they're really excited for St. Patrick's Day. And if you want to know how generic the Italian mobsters are in this movie, they cast Joe Vertelli as the main mobster. You know if you saw him, he's that guy who's every Italian movie. He's got like the big like hound dog pockmark face. Look him up. You're like, oh yeah, that's how generic this is. You meet
all of your favorite movies of all time, and Goodfellas and Godfather cast the same people as the Italian mobsters, but it's okay for them. But if you put in my movie, it's a negative all of a sudden.
Yeah, because he's a C-list actor. He's a C-list actor they bring in just for generic movies like this. And then you have Gary Oldman in this movie. It's like you meet Gary Oldman. The minute you see him, oh, he's the wild card. He's going to cause trouble for everybody. Exactly. That's exactly what he is. It's like it's such a generic film. Nobody needs to see your movie. My movie is held up because it's hard to find. It's not a wide release in America. My movie is a movie that people have not had the opportunity to watch. People have had the opportunity to watch your movie, and they've passed on it.
Yours is going to appeal to a very niche audience. You say, oh, I want to introduce in the Japanese noir. I want to introduce in this obscure director, this obscure actor. There's a reason they're obscure. Like you said, if there's a reason people haven't seen it, it's probably for a good reason, because it's not a very good movie.
Because it's not available in America. It doesn't get released. Your movie was wide released. It had this huge...
Everything in it is dated. I'd like you to let me talk, by the way, because it is my turn. There are so many lulls. There's a good 40 minutes in the middle of this where it was just a chore to sit through. It started off like, wow, I'm kind of glad Kirk picked this because this is interesting to me at the beginning. The ending, it got a little interesting. In the middle was boring as shit, except when they shoved in the musical sequences for no reason.
Your movie, the whole thing, I never felt that way about your movie, to be honest. I was bored the whole time from the get-go because I'm like, oh, I've seen this a million times. I've seen Donnie Brasco. I've seen Point Break. I've seen this movie done so much better so many times where it's just, and I'm going to spoil your movie for a minute. The one point of tension this movie has is Sean Penn and Gary Oldman. They're on the opposite ends. Sean Penn's the undercover cop, and he's selling out Gary Oldman. And what's going to happen when Gary Oldman finds out that he's selling him out? And Gary Oldman dies before he finds out he was a cop. So that one point of tension, gone. And the one thing that was interesting about this movie, gone. So this movie is just poorly structured, and it ends in that really crap. You want to talk about bad shootouts? That's completely slow motion shootout. The end of your movie is laughably bad.
Mine is like almost Shakespearean in its themes, and it has a great character arc to it. The acting is great. The plot is great. Everything about it. Yours, you have not told me anything unique about yours. Yours just said, oh, he has a cool style. Just because it's obnoxious and weird and musical doesn't make it good.
Oh, my God. Okay. That was one of the all-time great Kirk reactions. Brian, we're going to go to you for your closing. You have 1 minute when you start.
Don't let the slightly amusing title fool you. Detective Bureau 2-3 isn't some underrated classic. It's a forgettable Japanese crime film with pacing issues, out-of-place full musical numbers, subpar acting, and it's a bit of a bore. It's only like 86 minutes plus credits, yet, like I said, there's that 40 minutes in the middle that's basically filler, and I got restless trying to make it through. There are plenty of underrated or underseen Asian crime films, but this is not one of them. And if you did show someone this as an example of Asian crime films, they'd probably be less interested in checking out any more in the future. The fact is, the very limited audience of people who would actually enjoy your movie have already seen it. So it doesn't need to be seen by more people because the ones who enjoy it already know about it. And that's probably the limit of what it's going to get because it's a niche thing. State of Grace, though, is a film that deserves to be spoken of in the same breath as The Departed or Heat. It's a gritty, grounded, neo-noir masterpiece with top-tier direction, stellar cast, great atmosphere, and it's a true hidden gem that could win over a much broader audience if only more people even knew it existed. This isn't some overlooked B movie. It's a top-tier production with world-class talent that deserves to be seen.
Okay. I'm going to go over to Kirk. Kirk, you have 1 minute when you start talking.
Again, I'm going to go back to Brian mentioned the pedigree of this movie. If this movie deserved a bigger audience, it would have it. It's as simple as that. He says, no one wants to watch my movie because they wouldn't enjoy it. His movie, no one needs to watch his movie because they've seen his movie a million times. The generic cops and robbers, we've seen it a million times. He said I didn't say anything about my movie. I mentioned the score, the really fun score, a little anachronistic but fun score. The storyline, the cat and mouse game, the setting, the set design, the cinematography, the acting, the performances, the music, the musical numbers. It's a really fun movie, and it's a great introduction to this specific subgenre and this specific director because I think this is the easiest one to access because it is a lighter tone, because it's easier to watch. I think this is one that people would like and come into. Let's face it, Brian is not the test market for, let's go find new crime movies. Let's find something new and interesting. There are people out there who have broader horizons and who will want to watch this movie. His movie's been done to death.
Fine. Okay. All right, gonna bring in the judges.
Hey, Tim, you ever think about doing a marathon debate where you just put a camera on Kirk and Brian for like 10 hours and just see how long it takes before it devolves into madness?
I don't know. We're getting really close.
What happened in the first minute?
when Brian said Shakespearean, I thought Kirk's hat was going to explode.
It absolutely is.
That was beautiful. Okay, Robert, you're kicking us off.
Might be surprising to everybody. I have no concept or context of what's going on with these movies at all. Things were said that were meant to be an offense of what was supposed to be like a thing to want me to not make me want to watch a movie, but I was like, that kind of makes me want to watch this movie. Even if it sounds bad, it sounds interesting regardless. And thinking about that from that perspective and how they both set up the argument of why things are not seen, I decided to go with the Kirky boys. You know, the Jerky boys? I went with the Kirky boys. I went with Kirk because it sounded like that there were he did hit against Brian about like this is something that we've seen a bunch of times, and if I did like that point that with that pedigree you would think more people would have seen it. And yeah, I mean the weird musical interludes in it, I mean, Brian, that kind of shot against you. That was like friendly fire. That made me want to see it. So those things combined with Kirk's closing made me pick Kirk.
Okay, I went with Brian. I thought that Kirk did a good job of saying, you know, we've seen this movie before. It's not really anything new. But I thought that Brian did a good job of. I get where Robert's coming from, like saying like the crazy shit like makes you want to see the movie more. And yeah, sure. But I think Brian's argument of like there is something as like too niche and that all of these crazy things are not going to work for a broader audience whereas his movie would. And there are actors and music and visuals that people can kind of relate to or get drawn in by versus Kirk's movie. Now, it sounds like I would rather want to watch Kirk's movie, but Kirk kind of even said it like Brian's not the litmus test for crime movies or whatever. But yeah, but I mean, like, I don't know. It just sounds to me like Kirk's movie wouldn't work to a large group of people. So I went with Brian. Mark, your thoughts?
Yeah. I think it is interesting because I think I'm the only one on the panel who's seen one of these movies, which because Brian brought it to a round table.
Oh, nice.
Oh yeah.
That being said, I did go with Kirk on this one. Pretty similar to Robert. I kind of stand by at least the Kirk attacks of if it were to be held to one of those pedigrees, it would eventually find its audience. Like, we do have like cult classics that, eventually find like kind of that audience and eventually branch out. And also like it is kind of like as Kirk describes, it does sound like a lot of crime films that we've seen. And even though like there sounds like there's some kooky elements to Kirk's movie, it sounds more interesting. And just on an unrelated note, we brought up several times in this fight that Sean Penn is undercover. It is not meant to be common knowledge Sean Penn is undercover. So like that kind of, also kills Brian's movie a little bit. So
all right. So Kirk takes the lead. It is 3-2. What this means, Brian needs to hit both speed round questions in order to send it or to win. If Kirk hits one, he is the winner. So here's how this is going to work. I randomized which side of Fanzone the first of two questions was going to come from. The second question will come from the other one. I then randomized the categories that weren't used in the prep round to decide where your speed round question would come from. You're each going to get 45 seconds and 30 seconds to debate your choice. I'm forgetting something. Oh, I'm going to say the question. Once I've said the question the second time, you can say your answer. Do you understand these rules as I have read them?
If we say no, can we not do speed round?
No. Okay. The side of Fanzone that was drafted first was general movies. The category was coming of age films. Oh, I will post the question in the private chat as well for you to read. Your question is, who is the best lead character in a coming of age film? Again, who is the best lead character in a coming of age film?
I like the worst director.
It's not most likable again. So let's go with Jojo Rabbit.
I'm going to go with Connor, a.k.a. Cosmo from Sing Street.
Okay.
That's who I thought we would come up.
All right. Jojo Rabbit and Sing Street. Brian, you spoke first, which means you get to go first. You have 45 seconds when you start talking.
So Jojo and Jojo Rabbit is a great character because not only is he a likable kid and he has a great imagination to him, he has a great relationship with his mother, he has a great relationship with his friends, but he's somebody that represents something more. He represents somebody that can, escape from the brainwashed Nazi youth that he's been grown up in, which is something that's timely for current days when, somebody can unlearn their extremism. He learns to empathize with other people because he learns, to take some sympathy with with Thomas McKenzie's character, the Jews hiding out in their house. Everything about him shows growth. He shows entertainment because he can be funny. His imagination with his imaginary friend Hitler, kind of the internal struggle he's having with propaganda, and eventually manages to discard him. And he's just a great hit. Shows great arc.
Time. Okay, Kirk, 45 seconds.
What I love about Connor in a lot of ways, he's a stereotypical coming of age guy. He sees the girl, he wants to get the girl, and he's a lovable guy. You like him. You want to see him win. You root for him. He has a great set of friends. But the thing that's really great about him is you see him like putting work in to make himself a better person. You see him doing something. You see him accomplishing something outside himself. You see he wants to set a band. It starts out just to be about the girl, but it becomes something more. It becomes about the camaraderie with his friends. He learns he has this ability and this talent within himself. And I think that's what makes him so great and separates him from a lot of others where it's just, oh, I want to get the girl. I want to do everything and be sleazy. He does something outside of himself, make himself better.
Time. Brian, 30 seconds.
I feel like Connor's not such a great character because everything happens too easily for him. He does quickly form the band. He gets that girl. He escapes his troubled home, and everything happens so easily that you don't really get to see a lot of growth. You get to see a lot of change in the character. In Jojo Rabbit, you get to see who he is at the beginning. You get to see who he is at the end, and how the relationships he's had, the loss he's suffered, with everybody he's interacted with, whether it's Sam Rockwell's character or his mom or anybody. You can see how he has changed, and what makes him a great character is the things that he goes through. Not getting anything on in 2 seconds. So.
Kirk, 30 seconds.
You say Connor has it too easy. We see his troubled home life. We see him getting bullied at school. We see him dodging literal sexual abuse. I don't think anything comes too easy for him. It's a feature-length movie. You don't have time to spend with all of it, but I think you definitely see the struggles that he's going through, and everything overcomes again through his work, through his music. You want to talk about too easy? JoJo goes from full-blown Nazi to just an okay, good guy in the length of the movie. If anything's too easy, he gets off too easy. Connor has to work for everything he gets, and that's what makes him a better character.
Time. Okay. I believe we are to Mark, yes?
Yeah, please. Get to the important thing out of the way from what Robert was saying around the time. What the name that he was talking about was Joey Jojo Jr. Shabadoo. That was the name that he was talking about. Yeah, this is kind of interesting because I feel like they both started out pretty even, setting up the characters pretty well. And then I feel like Brian kind of like almost lobbed up a ball, at least for Kirk, just by kind of throwing up the line of like, I don't know, the Cosmo kind of had it too easy. I thought in my head, well, there's a lot of stuff that happens there. And then Kirk just kind of names all the things real quick and then just turns that around on Brian of like his character going from full Nazi to then like being redeemed at the end. So yeah, kind of went with Kirk there, like in those last 30 seconds, kind of meticulously kind of tore down kind of what Brian was bringing him.
Okay, Robert.
Yeah, I actually didn't think it was that even to start. I thought that Brian threw out a lot. I thought, it's one of those things speed rounds, a lot of volume, a lot of things to say, and I thought he set a long table, and Kirk set a nice table, but it was kind of shorter. And then yeah, the 30 seconds at the end, Brian did leave that up, but I think that's kind of the low hanging fruit. So I went with Let Sleeping Dogs Bry. I went with Brian for this one, just because I thought his beginning
I don't know
was
if I'm
a lot
more upset
better.
about the vote or the pun.
You could be upset about both, Kirk. It's fine.
All right. Yeah, I'm somewhere in between my friends here. Well, both Kirk and Brian and Mark and Robert. I agree with Robert in that the opening for Brian, very strong. I thought that he did a really good job of going through JoJo, talking about everything that makes him a great character. I thought Kirk's opening of talking about Connor and what he does as a character to get the girl, and how it's not a sleazy thing. It's like he does work on himself, and that's nice and everything. Like, I thought that was good. But I agree with Mark that I voted for Kirk because I thought that Kirk's just like slam dunk there at the end was really, really strong. And Brian said so many great things, but nothing to me outweighed Kirk's just like the banger there of like, you're talking about easy, like this was the like JoJo got off easy, and thinking about the movies and the way that they go. I love both of these movies very much. I think that it's true, and it was supported there. So I went with Kirk, which means your winner and still Fanzone debate champion, Kirk Kowalkowski. Let's get into some post-match interviews. Brian, obviously not the way you would want a title match to go. But coming out of the first two questions, it was looking like it was maybe going to be a little rough, and you rallied back really well there in the second half of the match. Like, how are you feeling?
Not great. I felt like I did really good in all of the main round questions. I'm not criticizing votes. I'm just saying I'm surprised by some votes. But I mean, everybody sees and picks up on different things. So as a judge, I understand that. Yeah. So when we got to the point where I was going to have to win both speed round questions, I knew that the chances were slim I was going to win them both. If I won this one, good chance I would have lost the last one. I mean, slim chance I could have gotten both, but it was slim. So I don't know. It's frustrating, because I do try to put a lot of work into preparing for these things, and it's like kind of decide if it's worth it. Yeah. And so it's like, I don't know. Maybe it's time for another break. I don't know. I haven't decided that yet, but we'll see.
Yeah, I get it, Brian. We appreciate that you put your all into it. It's very clear. A lot of
I do also want to say real quick, I'm sitting here wallowing my own, but I don't want to take that away from Kirk. Kirk is a great debater. I mean, obviously he has a very different style than mine. He's much more laid back. I tend to prepare my opening and closing because I don't trust myself to get everything out. And his style works, and he manages to just pick up on things. And like you guys have said, he will pick up on these things and just slam dunk you. And I respect him for that. That's why he's been champion so many times. So I don't want my negativity of myself to reflect on my opinion of Kirk. You did a great job.
Sure. Absolutely. Brian, I think you played great. I mean, lots of split decisions tonight too. It's not like it was just, all the ones you were losing were ones that were just like clean. So I think there was one clean sweep the whole match, maybe, now that I'm thinking about it. So it was a lot of split decisions. So I think if anything, that just shows like how well you prepare and how well you form your arguments, that like they can be picked up on pretty much any topic, like a Kurosawa topic that like I think going into it was not one that maybe like you were excited to debate, but you made
I spent yesterday watching 3 different Asian movies that I did no interest in seeing.
That's fair. Brian, if this is your last match for a while because you decided to take a break, I think it was a great one. But if you decide to come back and play, I'm super excited to see what happens next with you. But either way, we'll see you back in the judge's chair real soon so that you can inflict this pain upon others, because that's what we do here at Fanzone Debate. So, Brian, thanks for being here. We'll see you next time as we bring in the winner, Kirk Kowalkowski. Kirk, like I said to Brian, really great match, split decisions the whole time, except for that first one there. But what were you feeling coming out of those like two hits in a row? You're up 2-0, and then to be tied all of a sudden 2 questions later. Like how was that feeling?
Yeah, I wasn't taking anything for granted. I felt, all these were so close. I think those first 2 I won by the skin of my teeth, and I knew that every one of these was going to be a toss-up. So I had no illusions of like not going to the speed round. I knew Brian would hit a couple of these, so I was mentally prepared to go the distance on this. I feel like, this is one of the rare times I'll say I think I, for the most part, agree with the judges. Like I said, they were all close, but like the ones I lost, I'm like, yeah, Brian did better on that. And the ones I won, I said Brian, I think could have won, but I was satisfied with what I had to say in those fights. So no, Brian's great, as always, brings out the best. You see me getting fired up, that player's bringing out the best in me. So I'm always glad to play him, and he did a great job. But yeah, it was tense the whole way through.
Kirk, what this means now for you next. We're going to see you later at the end of the summer, post-tournament. You're going to be going up against tournament winner. So I'm going to throw out some names, and I want you to tell me what speaks to you. We're going to start with the low seeds going up. Ready? You got Adelaide Spence, Javi Madden, Alex Martinez, Jack Pinchuk. Then on the positive side, you've got Bill Carriola, Joe Farrelly, Robbie Kastner, and the number 1 seed for the tournament, your good friend Jacoby Bancroft. What are your thoughts?
I think I'm going to play this guy. I've been thinking about that for a while. I was looking at the stats, and I think Robert is the only person who's ever challenged for a Fanzone title that I haven't played. And I think he's the only top 10 player that I haven't played. So I think that would be a really good debate. I think he has a very unique style. I think he's a really good up-and-coming player. I think he gets better every time, so I think he'd be a really good challenge. So, yeah, I've been wanting to actually play Robert for a while, so I'd like to see that happen.
Okay. All right. I like that. We'll see what happens because the tournament begins next week, Kirk. We'll see you at the end of the... Oh, actually, I have one more question for you, Kirk. One more question. No matter what, at the end of the summer, Fanzone takes a little bit of a break while season 2 of the Virtual Survivor airs. But when we come back, Amaru Moses cashes in his title shot from the last word. Do you want to go up against Rue again? Obviously you want to be the champion. Do you want to be there for Rue again, or no? I don't know. You don't want Rue again, and he's gone.
Yeah, obviously. So wait, is Rue before or after the tournament winner?
After the tournament winner.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. I still want, obviously, but yeah, I want to play Rue again. I know Rue wants me, and I want to see that happen. I want to see Rue eventually win this title. I just don't want him to beat me for it. But if that happens, there's worse people who could beat me for it. So, no, either way, I'm looking forward to playing the tournament winner and hopefully playing Rue afterwards.
Absolutely. Kirk, congrats on the win and retaining your title. That is going to do it for us today at Fanzone Debate. So thank you to Kirk. Thank you to Brian. Thanks, Mark and Robert. And thank you to everybody else who helps make this train run. Great match. Like I said, next week, the tournament begins with the number 4 seed, Bill Carriola, going up against the number 5 seed, Jack Pinchuk. Fireworks, I'm sure. All right, we'll see you guys next time. But until then, have a great night. Bye-bye.
There we go. Thanks a lot. Come again.
Hey, I want won't forget what you've done for me here today.
I would prefer that you do.